Hajime, welcome back to Comic-Jutsu. JT McRoberts here, and I'm happy to be joined by Phil K this week.
What's going on, Comic Universe fans?
These are the Comic Book Dojo citizens, is what I've decided to call them. So they are the citizens for now.
Hello, citizens.
It's kind of like the City of Heroes, It's like the Comic Book Dojo is universal, man. It's all around, So if you follow Comic Book Dojo, you are a citizen of the Comic Book Dojo. But today we are going to take you back into the Comic Book Dojo as we break down the fighting style of the one and only Iron Fist, the living weapon, as we continue the second part of his awesome origin, which, believe it or not, was not completely featured in the first issue with the first appearance of Iron Fist, because they had a rotating creative crew on Iron Fist, and that job fell to Len Wein and artist Larry Hama, who came in and took over for departing writer, though staying editor, Roy Thomas, and departing artist Gil Kane. I actually do not have this issue in the floppies, but I think you do.
Yes, I do. I have the entire run of the Marvel Premiere run and the John Byrne series.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Good flex. I do not have all of them. I have a few issues here and there. It's a spotted collection.
I may have some extra. You may partake.
Okay, cool.
I have to check.
Cool. How was your Power Man and Iron Fist run?
Spotty early on in the 50, low 50s, 60s probably. I know it's 75 on. I have all of them.
It's about the same.
I have to go back and check. I always got the Kool-Aid because some of the issues are a little boring back then. So I would pick and choose when I would get the back issues. So I want to go back and get all of them though.
Yeah, it took them a minute to find their footing after John Byrne and Chris Claremont left right after the initial union, but then they were able to hit the ground running pretty quickly.
Before Christopher Priest took over.
Is that who took over?
Like Owsley?
Jim Owsley?
Yeah, that was Christopher Priest.
Yeah, I read about that recently and how he completely effed up the Hobgoblin origin storyline over just like petty reasons. I was like, what is that all about?
He had a temper. That's why he killed Iron Fist too. At the end of that one, that run.
Yes.
Because they kept interrupting him and wanted to interfere with his story. And they're like, and he got so upset over, he's okay, I'll end it, and then killed Iron Fist because basically to get back at the people from messing with his, interfering with his story.
That's cool. I've never heard him talk about that, but I've always wanted to know because that is one of the all-time worst character deaths ever. I've got some neat little backstory things about Iron Fist and whatnot. I actually should have read this during the first episode of Comic Book Dojo, wherein we featured Iron Fist, because they talk about his origins here.
At least on the cover.
Yeah, that's actually a cover to one of the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu.
I have the omnibus
issues. It's one of the covers for the omnibus too, so it must not be the cover that you have.
They have multiple covers now, so I have the first cover of the first omnibus.
I think this scene does not appear in this magazine type of cover. Yeah. Can you imagine seeing that on the shelf and you're like, oh man, Shang-Chi, Iron Fist throwing down, and look at him, he's throwing the Iron Fist at everything. You flip through the magazine, you're like, this is some BS, man. Or as Shannon Sharp would say, this is some bull jive. But this is what I should have read, because Roy Thomas actually breaks down the origin of Iron Fist and how they came up with it. And you remember last time how we were talking about some of the parallels with like Bruce Lee and Kung Fu, the TV series and all that. Well, apparently none of that is true. That's just us reading things into it. But, Bruce Lee and the Kung Fu TV series were definitely a part of the social fabric and the zeitgeist at the time. I mean, that was, the Kung Fu movie wave of the 70s. But he talks about their origins, and he says the story of traveling to the Hidden City, they actually stole from Lost Horizon and Amazing Man comics.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Because I back in the Matt Fraction Brubaker run of the Immortal Weapon.
Yes.
they actually talk about it. In fact, I can't remember the character name, had the one that could turn into the Mist character was based on Amazing Man. It has homage.
Oh yeah. Was it Randall? What's it? Randall Krant? Something like.
No,
that. It sounds like the Shadow, but
that was his. No, that was his instructor. That was the instructor of his dad, the teacher. His dad's teacher was that guy.
Okay.
Randall, yeah, Wendell Randall.
Okay.
And everything, and that's why Danny Rand's father took the name Rand from Wendell Randall. But that was it. But the actual character, he was one of the immortal weapons. I can't remember his name. Prince of Orphans.
Was that it? Okay.
Prince of Orphans. Prince of Orphans. His character is based on Amazing Man.
Okay, well, cool. Well, we'll have to.
Iron Fist.
We'll definitely cover that run at some point during this. And they show their hand too because Shangri-La is based in the Kunlun Mountains, and then they straight up stole that name for Kunlun. But you have to do what you have to do in that time period. So all of the storytelling and all of the nuances and like all of the pathos and everything that was built in that was cooked in by Gil Kane.
Okay. And
he was the one that brought in the Amazing Man influences for it. So we should have talked about that last time, but we talked about it this time. So that will catch you up to date.
Was it true that the Iron Fist came from the old Kung Fu? Watching that film.
I'm glad you mentioned that because there's one laying right here. King Boxer, aka the Five Fingers of Death. Roy Thomas, he mentions here in back issue, which I highly recommend back issue if you're interested in like the backstories of the characters. And they also talk about art techniques, but it's not as heavy on art techniques. It's more the story of what was going on at the time or what influenced you into doing this. So the back issues are really really good. They're organized by theme, like you can see. This one is the Kung Fu issue. So I had to get this. I mean, it's got everything from Iron Fist, Master of Kung Fu, to Yang, Bronze Tiger, Muhammad Ali, Hong Kong Phooey, and more.
Hong Kong Phooey
and more.
Remember that cartoon?
Hong Kong Phooey, #1 super guy. Yeah, I love that show. That was probably my first exposure to Kung Fu. Yeah, Hong Kong Phooey, man. But Roy Thomas says he saw his first Kung Fu movie had an Iron Fist training sequence in it, and that's where he took the name from. And I think he's talking about this. He never names King Boxer. Plus, there's sequences where he charges up his hands and the screen flashes red and stuff. I mean, it's like pure
Iron Fist.
Pure Iron Fist. Yeah. So anyway, we pick up with the second part of the origin of Iron Fist in Marvel Premiere number 16. Where on the cover they feature the villainy of the Scythe. The Scythe sadly did not spark up interest in fandom and become a recurring iconic character. Though he is wielding an actual, a real karate weapon there, the Kusarigama, right there on the cover.
Bless you. Jokes.
I like that this issue is drawn by Larry Hama, which means he did the bulk of the printing. Another thing that they talk about in the back issue story, in the back issue article, is that they had a rotating series of writers for Marvel Premiere. And they literally, this second issue, they're just like, we need somebody to write this one. Len Wein, you write this. So he basically did the Stan Lee of putting the words on the page for what Larry Hama had drawn.
Okay.
So a lot of the coolness and the mysticism of what we really love about Iron Fist, I think we can attribute to Larry Hama. So we're going to take a look at some of that today. All right, now fight-wise, this fight works, but it's a little bit, I would say, inelegant. Here we have Fist squaring off against multiple attackers. They've got the classic array of clue weaponry, the lead pipe, the knife. Somebody just needs the revolver, and they can fight in the library. Yeah, so they're hunting down Fist because they've got a reward for the guy with this dragon tattoo. Fortunately, not a lot of people had that same brand.
It's not a tattoo. Marvel TV show, Iron Fist TV show. Just saying.
Unfortunately, not a lot of people had that same brand or that look of that in tattoo form. I think Len Wein is just kind of like talking a bunch of nonsense here with a lot of these names. A well-placed elephant kick or the blow of the hammer. He's just, dude is just riffing, I think, at this point, just throwing some stuff out here to put some words on the page when really he didn't have to do anything, but the fight itself works. Okay, so in always reading in left to right for American comics, which throws me off when you look at manga because it's right to left, so you have a completely different orientation, but always reading from left to right. So the first technique we're going to see here is either a jab or a bottom fist, and then he comes across with this backhand blow to block the knife attack, it looks like. Immediately following up, sidekick to the gut there, and the right hand punch to the solar plexus here. Reverse punch. Yep, reverse punch. Easily, because you see the chambered hand there at the waistline, which is pure karate.
That would work better for that with a back kick, but just saying.
That's why I was saying it was inelegant, because what he's doing is he's going 180 degrees with every attack. Yeah, so you're going bing, 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 and it's like, holy cow, he's doing like twice. He's doing twice the work, but but it works for a comic book page, So it's obviously it's going to be different from cinema or even real life combat, And I think this may even literally be Larry Hama's first Marvel drawing assignment. Okay. So this is early in his career. And I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of his combination with Dick Giordano on inks here. I don't think the art looks very good in this issue at all. I mean, the framework is there. I mean, the anatomy, everything makes sense, but something tells me that these were produced at kind of a breakneck rate. Mm-hmm. And much like with the writers, they were kind of like, Dick Giordano, you do the inking on this. Although Roy Thomas does take credit for saying he handpicked Giordano to ink this because he wanted him to do it. He thought it would be a good look for him, but I don't know. I don't really like the marriage of the two. And I mean, this is all interesting stuff here. So he's dodging the knife and initiating some kind of trap. You see the nice palm strike thrust there, or they're calling it the bear thrust. Steals away the breath of the other.
It kind of reminds me during the Immortal Iron Fist run with the Fraction Brubaker. Fraction said they would basically put a bunch of names in a hat, like different animal, and pull it out, the name techniques.
I believe that. I believe that. And Kung Fu, I mean, if you look into it enough, there is a lot of stuff like this. Right. Monkey steals peach from, pick up pine from ocean bottom. I mean, everything has some kind of
grab the pebble,
elaborate, crazy name. The sword hand. So yeah, I think he's just kind of talking nonsense for some of these, but Larry Hama, even though it's not great draftsmanship as the way it comes across, it's well choreographed, and of course the physics and everything behind it is very believable. So he's at least keeping that thread of believable combat alive. And here we go, Marvel Comics. Every comic is someone's first comic book, so you immediately have to go back to recap a little bit of what happened in the previous issue, and of course they build upon it, where they tell the young Daniel Rand, we'll give you whatever you desire, and he says, "There's only one thing I want, mister." What kid says mister? That's pretty funny. You can,
right? Is that Captain America?
Yeah, right. It's only one thing I want, mister. I want revenge.
He's angry, boy.
Yeah, he's like young Robin here. Somebody needs to teach him the error of his ways there.
Is he trying to steal tires off the Batmobile?
Apparently. But then we get the introduction, of course, of one of our favorite characters of all time, especially in the Iron Fist mythos, and that is Li Kung, the Thunderer. Which is great. He appears over and over again throughout all of the Mystic Kunlun storylines.
He's the immortal, because they're all immortals in Kunlun, so he's the immortal instructor who taught every single Iron Fist.
Very nice.
Except for the most recent one. Of course, because they killed him off. Tragically. Yeah. Off screen. Of course. Get me started.
In the tradition of killing Iron Fist off screen. So there you go. Because that's what Jim Owsley did to him. And here you see he sets up this trial that Iron Fist has to, well, at the time, Danny has to overcome, which is snatching this crown off the snake. And by the end of the page, I mean, he's accomplished it. But again, here you see the parallels to the Kung Fu TV series, because Larry Hama, even though he doesn't talk about it or admit it that I've seen in anything, like they say nothing about this issue of Iron Fist in this over here in the magazine I keep pulling out. Nothing about it. It's just, we did it. And Larry Hama he's definitely infusing this with his martial knowledge from his time in Vietnam military. I mean, he used that to great effect when he was writing G.I. Joe, or when he created the Nam for the new universe, that kind of stuff. But also you can see he's obviously influenced by the Kung Fu TV show. And this is the classic snatch the pebble from my hand moment here, where there's snatching the crown from the snake's head. I mean, it's a nice little variation on it. You know, I like that.
Must be quick.
But this is nice storytelling here. I like this, where they start with the young Danny and they shave his head and he slowly grows in each panel. So you have this passage of time, just over 4 panels there, showing his advancement. One thing about the storytelling that I thought was a little bit goofy and was bad for an actual martial artist, and Larry Hama must have done it this way. I mean, obviously he doesn't have much of a choice, but it's that he's having these elaborate flashbacks, because Iron Fist, he always mentions it in the writing. Memories, for less than an instant, your mind has wandered through them. It's like, really? In the middle of a fight, you're thinking about that stuff? Like, no wonder you're about to get hit.
Must come back.
Exactly. I mean, Iron Fist makes a lot of novice mistakes, if that is actually the case. I think Len Wein didn't help him with that dialogue there in that narrative box. The guy's coming at him from behind with the lead pipe, and
Part 2.
Yeah, he gets him with the front kick, so he must spin all the way around to hit an attacker from behind.
And sort of a sidekick, I guess.
Oh, it's like a front kick, I think.
I was thinking about this.
Oh, yeah, that's a side kick. We can say that's a side kick. He's kind of got that straight line there, and then who knows what's going on here? He's got a weird bend to his wrist.
I guess it's supposed to be like an uppercut of some type.
Yeah. This is like beyond a Rob Liefeld uppercut even. And he's got like a throw going on over here, because you see this guy.
Life is a bad man.
Yeah. This is almost like even an Aikido throw, because you see the straight arm, and it's almost like in a Rimi or Tenkan redirection and throwing him around. If we had my Aikido book, I'd show you an example of that. But anyway, so you've got like 3 techniques firing off right here. So this is all good stuff. It could be drawn a little bit better. It could be rendered in a way that made this clearer, but again, you're battling with page space and time and storytelling edicts where you have to force these flashbacks in, and so they're making it work with what they have anyway. Continue the training of young Danny Rand. Now, this is probably the only other element that Roy Thomas did add to Iron Fist's origin, because he does mention the Iron Fist training sequence in the Kung Fu film that he saw that he never names. So here we have Danny Rand learning to
toughen his hands.
Yep.
Sand. Did it start with sand?
Sand, gravel.
Yeah.
Rock. It's like he's just punching concrete, right? Like right then, you're like, damn, he doesn't even need the Iron Fist. Dude could just crack concrete.
Rock.
And then he punches the wooden pole. It's kind of a step back from the rock, but anyway. Until your hand becomes as the rock, unfeeling, irresistible. Hey! Good ki there. So it's a lot of heavy karate influence early on in the story of Iron Fist, though you will see a little bit of Kung Fu pop in later. Thank goodness. So he does have Kung Fu, at least by the second part of his origin. It's too bad that this wasn't like an oversized issue where they published it all together. Though that would be good to reprint it in that fashion nowadays. But this is good. And again here, keeping in mind, there's no overarching storyline to this. This is just Larry Hama putting this stuff on the page. And here you have just a gigantic piece the mythos with Xiaolong the dragon here on the page.
The Undying.
They send Iron Fist to confront him, and it all happens over the course of just 2 pages. Very, very quick, but a lasting impression on the mythos of Iron Fist. Lasts for a very, very long time. And Len Wein really fills in these boxes here. I mean, he's got all kinds of stuff going on. For a moment you pondered this, then a silent prayer upon your lips. And most of these could easily be removed, and you just let this play out. You hurled yourself boldly at the strangely shaped scar upon the Dragon Lord's breast. That's like way too much. It's just slowing down the flow of the action here, especially with all these imaginative elements that Larry Hama is putting on the page. I think it's interesting that Xiaolong he's not even really, I mean, he kind of looks like a Oriental type dragon, like but he actually looks more like a Lenorm, if you're familiar with that from like Dungeons and Dragons. It's a wingless dragon, so it's kind of interesting.
He must dress his hands.
But yes, so he gets the brand from the dragon, the Undying One. And Len definitely throws all those little names in here, beating the soul of Xiaolao, the Undying. This was the heart of the dragon. And these are words and phrases that are going to reverberate over and over and over again through Iron Fist's existence.
I was going to say, it's kind of an odd origin. You beat the dragon, you think you would get the power from that, but then you have to go in like here and then fight, and then stick his hand into the vat till he basically can't stand it to get the power.
You know what that tells me? That this dragon is nothing. This Len Wein is the one who made him the Undying Xiaolong and all this stuff. This dragon was just a door guard, you know. Len Wein's like, no, this is the Undying one. This the dead one here. That's the Undying one, Xiaolong. That he kind of spiced that up. Right. So I guess he carried his little bit of water there.
You could tell later on it gets way more intimidating. The dragon is bigger, fearsome with other later creators.
Yeah, because this is throwaway. I mean, this is 3. I mean, it only exists through 2 pages, and then you see its corpse. You know, it gets just barely more time than the little snake at the beginning. You know, I thought this was an interesting storytelling choice to continue this panel across 2 pages. Though I wonder about the colorist, if this was kind of, if they shouldn't have continued the yellow. The yellow in the caption boxes there.
But then goes some blue, kind of orange, yellow, green. It's all over the place.
It changes all over the place, but this is supposed to be read as one panel, so you would think they would have kept that.
More uniform.
Yeah, kept that same color scheme there. And again, I mean, I don't know that this warrants an actual half a splash page, you know, but he didn't have a lot of real estate to work with if he would have just confined it to that one narrow panel.
My question is, all the skulls and skeletons and everything, like the dragon killed them and then drag them in here so the bodies can decompose, or did they beat the dragon, or they couldn't stand the vat and died there? That would be the question.
Probably both. That's pretty good. Yeah, something that prospective Iron Fist writers should look into. Yeah. Good questions. Yeah, but I love this stuff. This is Larry Hama just mimicking all those classic Iron Fist. I mean, I think this is literally taken from Five Deadly Fingers,
right?
Where he's learning the Iron Fist technique. Now that looks good. Yes. That's where Giordano's inking pays off. But man, through the rest of this, the action is it just does not look great. So we return through the flashback as he staggers out into the snow. That's pure Kane after lifting the scalding brazier and stumbling out from the monastery in Kung Fu. And here he confronts Scythe. Yes, a little-known Iron Fist nemesis there, apparently. But he is wielding the Kusarigama, which is a real weapon, which has the kama with the chain and ball attached to it. The art of wielding the Kusarigama being Kusarigama-Jutsu, with the Japanese spelling, Jutsu. That's for the art as it should be. We say that in mention because the name of this channel is Comic-Jutsu. We did intentionally use the American English spelling of jutsu.
Right.
So, not the Brazilian version. But just because it was one of the earliest versions that we encountered. Yep, so here you have this little battle against the Kusarigama. You got Fist using a lot of athletics to jump out of the way. Nice use of, changing up the paneling a little bit. Very Neil Adams here. I'm sure Larry Hama was definitely inspired by a lot of Neil Adams Batman action there. Tilting the panels all around, which is pretty interesting, especially for the Kusarigama, because it just zips all over the place. And here you see that Z visual flow again, that zip, zip, zip. It's literally right there on the page.
Gives you the impression of speed. Mm-hmm. Being swift.
And the flow of time in comics is always interesting because flowing from left to right, it speeds things up. But anytime you can make people move from right to left, it actually slows things down. So you always have this kind of a zip flow through the page. And here we have Fist flashing back, finishing off the rest of his origin. There's Larry Hama just literally mimicking the pages from the previous issue there, though not nearly as good in a use of the Iron Fist there.
That's powerful.
Shows it from a slightly different angle. And you have the head here. This is probably just a rookie mistake. I mean, the most prominent feature of this is the flying head, not the fist. Right. Where when we looked at it with Gil Kane and the fist, you had that like a rocket just firing across the page. And the exploding golem head, you almost don't even see in that frame, But here he makes the mistake of giving the golem more of a psychic presence on the page. And this is interesting here. The
he's awarded the chance to take from the tree of immortality, and he turns it down for revenge.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting that they had the apples of immortality. That was it's like, they call it the fruit of the tree of immortality. If they were going to have a little bit more Chinese leaning to it, they should have done a peach, the peaches of immortality. Oh, wait, did I skip over the Kung Fu? Right here, okay. Because he actually says you assume the cat stance, and boom, cat stance is a real Kung Fu stance. And
or karate, though. I've seen karate, too. But at least they got some animal form.
Yes, and they got some kind of Kung Fu in there. But the structure is right. The physics look good on it. So kudos to Larry Hama for getting that in there. And I would imagine that anything that's actually correct in here as pertains to the martial arts or the weapons or anything was probably something that he wrote in the margins for Len Wein to make sure he put it into the script and the dialogue. So Iron Fist says that he would rather go back to the world of man. Now, what happened to this cape? I actually like this look.
I'm like, don't look very warm, though, does it?
No, it does not look very warm, especially those little slippers sinking ankle deep into the snow there.
But it's training.
Yeah.
He can focus his chi to warm his body.
But I like this cape. I would have to bring this back if I was doing Iron Fist. So like, man, we need to bring the red cape.
The red cape.
You have to fight with the red
not
cape.
Not yellow, not green.
Not yellow, not green, but red, man.
I wonder if it comes off of like that color, because you see the UT with that instead of the cape.
Yeah, you see the little red fringe there. But again, he's flashing back during the fight. It's not a great time to do that. Catches the attack.
Not this time.
Redirects him with kind of a throw there because he's got a good trap on the arm. It's a basic. What was that? It's not the Shio-Nagi. I forget what the basic grab was called, or Goki. Something like that. I should have looked it up. But anyway, redirects his pressure, throws him into this wooden fence there, grabs his Kusarigama, the chain. But because he's all wrapped up, Scythe can pull him off balance. This is an interesting battle. I wonder, it's actually reminding me of, there was a fight like this in Samurai 2 between Miyamoto Musashi and the master of a Kusarigama. Okay. I wonder if he pulled some influence from that So that's pretty interesting there. He's giving Fist a little bit of trouble because he can get away with them and use the length of the chain.
And you have to keep in mind, whenever Danny used the Iron Fist, it would weaken him, so he couldn't do it all the time. It was almost like a last resort, kind of.
That's true. Though that is actually not codified into this until Chris Claremont takes over a few issues later.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can read this as that. Like, why is he not just used? Like, why wouldn't you just start with the Iron Fist? You know? Oh, 5 dudes, Iron Fist, just explode the sidewalk. You know.
Like in the show.
Yeah. Probably the only decent moment of the show. But Chris Claremont, when he took over as writer and became the first recurring writer, was the first one that solidified that, crystallized it in the actual book.
Until later on, when they amped up his power, it no longer was weakened.
Mm-hmm. But so anyway, so good stuff. This is good use of rising tension here as Scythe is just getting closer and closer, and Len Wein is walking you all through this. I'm sorry, I keep saying that guy's name different every single time, but that's just going to happen. I'm from the South, and it's the way we roll down here.
Wein.
We say, yes.
Win.
We say that if you don't know how to pronounce something, then say it loudly. So that's what we try to do. So Scythe has Danny on the ropes. No, this actually, he breaks the chain here, and that's part of what you can barely see it in the artwork. But he says that he breaks the chain there. So Scythe is like, well, now I'm just going to kill you, because he was toying with him, apparently.
Like a cat with a mouse.
But Iron Fist steels himself, drawing upon his chi. I think that's the first mention of chi in this, probably. Interesting. They go with the Chinese chi and not Japanese ki or prana for the Indian. Until it seems to smolder and glow and become like a thing of iron. He didn't go unto like a thing of iron, though, but tried to mimic the Iron Fist usage from the first book. And maybe that's why he did this a little bit differently, but still...
Not as dynamic.
Not as dynamic. And the same kind of era of the psychic space here. This guy's got a lot of real estate here on the page when the Fist should be a bit more impressive. And they have to kind of show you the after effects of it rather than it happening on the page. But
smoking.
Again, this is early in Hama's career. Nice inking here. There are just a couple flashes where some of the panels just look really good, where it becomes a bit moodier.
Yes.
Got these action lines behind it as almost like a rack focus in cinema terms, focusing in on Iron Fist there. And then this almost like a Noir moment here where Danny's shadow takes over, where he might, where Scythe is afraid he's going to kill him.
Don't kill me.
But he decides not to.
And he's like, oh.
He gets the information that he wants, and he's like, yeah, well, they're just in that building right behind me. So Danny leaves to go find Meachum. So there you go. All right, so the second part of the origin of the great Iron Fist.
And I guess you get out of it, you get the Thunderer, the introduction of the Thunderer. And you get
Xiaolong.
The
Undying Dragon.
Undying Dragon.
Yes. Although it would be interesting to bring back that little snake with the crown on its head. That's another something you could do with that. That would be like his new mentor. He'd come back and he's like, shh.
But you got to have some people dying from it.
They trained me to find you. Make sure we continued your training.
Or you had a pet snake. You just had a pet snake going out.
Something to that effect. So anyway, you can always pull a lot of fun ideas out of the origins of these characters. And it's interesting to see how a character like Iron Fist has evolved and stayed vibrant through the years. Any closing thoughts on it?
Well, Iron Fist, one of my favorite characters of all time in the Marvel Universe.
Same.
Danny Rand. Just always thought the origin is so dynamic. Mystical City. You have Mystical Dragon, Mystical Fist. It was right up my alley as a kid.
Absolutely. I was thinking about the other day after we recorded the origin issue, the part 1, that I think the first time I really knew who Iron Fist was as a character was Incredible Hulk 300.
When he catches the fist.
Yeah, where he catches the fist. What a horrible introduction, but that was the first time, and I was like, oh, this dude looks cool, and he's like summoning the fist, and then Hulk's just like, I'm just going to catch that and
squeeze it,
redirect it, and make you totally punk you out. But it was off of that. I was like, this character's cool. Let me look a little bit more into him, and that's what happened.
300.
So there you go.
Hulk.
Thanks for joining us here in Comic Book Dojo. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Feel free to leave suggestions down below as to what heroes or specific issues you'd like to see us break down next here in the dojo. Follow my Twitter. Find everything out there in social media land. What about you, Phil K?
I'm at Fat Jitsu on Twitter. Look for me.
Okay, we'll put the link down below there for you.
And that's Fat with a FATJITSU.
The Brazilian Jitsu. Very good. So there you go. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, guys.
Next time, citizens.
As you were, citizens. Mate.